Breaking down doesn't mean breaking forever. Somewhere tonight, a person is sitting in a dark room, staring at a wall, convinced that this is it, that they are done, that whatever they had, the drive, the dream, the fire, it's gone, and it's not coming back. They are wrong. By the end of what I have to say to you, you're going to understand something most people never learn in a lifetime. The very moment that feels like you're ending is usually the construction site of your beginning. Stay with me. This is going to change how you see every hard season you've ever survived. So let me ask you something before we go any further. What if the worst thing that ever happened to you wasn't the end of your story? What if it was the first page of the only version worth telling? Breaking down is an event. It is not who you are. That single distinction, so simple to say, so hard to actually believe when you're living inside the wreckage, is the difference between a person who eventually stands back up and a person who spends the rest of their life kneeling in the rubble of one bad season. Think about the language we use without even noticing it. Someone goes through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a breakdown, a failure that cost them everything. And within weeks, they've quietly rewritten their own identity around it. They stop saying, I went through something hard, and start saying, I'm damaged. They stop saying, that was a terrible year, and start saying, I'm the kind of person things fall apart for. Do you see what happened there? A moment in time got promoted to a permanent title. An event got mistaken for an essence. And once a person accepts that mistaken identity, they stop trying to rebuild, because you don't renovate a house you've already condemned. Here is what nobody tells you in school, in church, in any of the places that are supposed to prepare you for real life. Every single person who has ever built something extraordinary has somewhere in their history a night they'd rather forget, a moment they weren't proud of, a season where they lost the job, lost the marriage, lost the money, lost their nerve, lost their sense of who they even were. The difference between the ones who are still stuck there and the ones who went on to build a remarkable life was never that one group broke and the other didn't. Everyone breaks. Life sees to that. The difference is what each of them decided to call what happened to them. One person says, I had a breakdown, past tense, a thing that occurred, something that happened on a Tuesday in a specific year for specific reasons and is now behind them the way a storm is behind a traveler once they've walked out of it. The other person says, I am broken, present tense, not an event anymore, a condition, a permanent weather system they now believe they live inside forever. And here's the tragedy. The facts of what happened to both people might be nearly identical. The same job loss, the same diagnosis, the same betrayal. The only real difference is the sentence they built around it. And that sentence became the cage or the doorway, depending on which one they chose. This matters because identity drives behavior far more than circumstance ever will. If you believe you are broken, you will act like a broken thing, carefully, fearfully, waiting for the next collapse, treating every new opportunity as something too fragile to risk on someone as unstable as you believe yourself to be. But if you believe you simply went through a breaking, a hard, real, undeniable event, you leave yourself room to do what every event allows for. It ends. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And once you're on the other side of it, you get to decide what comes next. So when you're in the middle of it, when the walls are down and nothing looks like it used to, the most important work you can do isn't fixing the outside circumstances first. It's refusing to let a season write your identity. Say it out loud if you have to. This happened to me. This is not who I am. Let the breaking be a Tuesday, not a title. Let it be a chapter with a page number, not the whole book. Because the moment you stop treating your worst season as your permanent nature, you free yourself to do the only thing that ever actually changes a life. You start building again, brick by brick, on ground that was never as ruined as it looked from where you were kneeling. Every person you have ever admired has a breaking point buried somewhere in their story. And if you dig deep enough, you will always find it. Not sometimes, not usually, always. It is the one thing every remarkable life has in common. And yet, it is the one part of the story that almost never gets told at the award ceremony, the graduation stage, or the interview where they ask someone to explain their success. We hear about the breakthrough. We rarely hear about the break. Think about how we consume other people's success. We see the finished building and assume it rose cleanly from the ground, one polished floor after another. We don't see the demolition that had to happen first. We don't see the night the foundation cracked, the season the whole project nearly got abandoned, the moment the person building it sat alone, wondering if they'd made a catastrophic mistake with their entire life. We only see the ribbon cutting. And because we only see the ribbon cutting, we start to believe that successful people simply skip the part where everything fell apart, that they were built differently, wired stronger, spared somehow from from the collapse that the rest of us have to survive. That belief is not just wrong, it is dangerous. Because it means that when your own collapse comes, and it will come, it comes for everyone, you will read it as proof that you are not like them. You will treat your breaking point as evidence that you were never cut out for whatever you were reaching for, instead of what it actually is. The exact experience every one of them had to walk through to get where you're watching them from. Here is the truth nobody puts on the trophy. The breaking point is not a detour from the story. It is not a regrettable accident that happened on the way to success, one they'd erase if given the chance. It is the hinge the whole story turns on. Take it out and nothing else makes sense. The confidence they carry now was forged in the exact place they once had none. The clarity they speak with today was earned in the exact season everything was unclear. The strength you're impressed by was built using the very weight that once nearly buried them. You cannot remove the breaking point from their story without also removing the reason the rest of the story exists at all. This is why I want you to change how you interpret your own breaking point the moment it happens. Stop asking, why is this happening to me, as if it disqualifies you from the life you wanted. Start asking, what is this building in me that I could not have built any other way? Because that is exactly what it is doing, whether you can see it yet or not. Every person who has ever rebuilt a life, a career, a marriage, a sense of self after everything fell apart will tell you the same thing if you ask them honestly. I would not be who I am now without that season, not despite it, because of it. So when you find yourself in your own breaking point, and if you're there right now, I want you to really hear this. Do not mistake the middle of the story for the end of it. A hinge is not a wall. A hinge is the part that allows the door to swing open into whatever comes next. You are not standing at the end of your life right now. You are standing at the hinge of it. The door has not shut. It is turning. And one day, if you keep showing up the way people before you have shown up, you will look back at this exact season, the one that feels unbearable right now, and you will recognize it for what it always was. Not the collapse of your story, the hinge it turned on. There is a strange kind of confusion that happens when everything in your life seems to be falling apart at once. From where you're standing, in the middle of it, it looks like destruction. It looks like loss. It looks like the ground giving way beneath everything you thought you'd built. But I want you to consider a possibility that almost nobody offers you in the moment you need it most. What looks like collapse from the inside is very often construction in disguise. Think about what actually happens when a real foundation gets laid for a building meant to last. Before a single beautiful thing rises out of the ground, something else has to happen first, and it isn't pretty. The old structure, if there was one, has to come down. The ground has to be dug up, torn open, cleared of everything that was sitting on top of it, including things that looked perfectly fine from the surface. Pipes get exposed, wires get pulled. The earth itself gets disturbed in ways that, if you walked past the site and didn't know what was coming, you would swear something had gone terribly wrong. It looks like a disaster zone. It looks like ruin. And yet this exact process, this exact mess, is the only way anything strong enough to last has ever been built. Nobody pours a real foundation onto ground that was never disturbed. Your life works the same way. And this is the part almost nobody tells you when you're the one standing in the wreckage. The season where the job disappears, the relationship ends, the health scare rearranges your priorities. The plan you'd built your whole identity around falls apart in front of you. That season feels like pure loss because you can only see what's being torn up. You cannot yet see what's being laid down underneath it. Because foundations are, by their very nature, invisible for a long time. Nobody builds a foundation and then admires it. They cover it up and build on top of it, which means the very thing that will one day hold up the strongest version of your life is happening right now, in the dark, in the mess, in the part of the process nobody gets to see or applaud. This is why judging your life by how it looks in the middle of the demolition is one of the most costly mistakes a person can make. If you look at torn up ground and conclude that nothing good could ever come from it, you will walk away from the very site where your strongest life was about to be built. You will go looking for easier ground somewhere else, ground that was never disturbed, never dug into, never tested, and you will build a life on top of it that looks fine on the surface, but was never actually anchored to anything. Meanwhile, the person who stayed, who let the digging happen, who tolerated the mess long enough for the concrete to be poured and cured, ends up with something the easier ground could never have given them. A life that can hold real weight. So when everything is falling apart around you right now, I want you to reframe what you're actually looking at. You are not watching your life get destroyed. You are watching the parts that could never have held up the future get cleared away, so that something can finally be laid down that will. The instability you feel is not proof that nothing solid is coming. It is the exact sensation of ground being prepared for something solid to be poured. It will not stay this way. No foundation stays exposed forever. Somewhere ahead of you, on ground you cannot yet see the shape of, something is going to rise that would never have been possible on the comfortable, undisturbed ground you were standing on before everything broke. Let the digging happen. Let the mess be the mess for as long as it needs to be. Because what's underneath a real foundation is never visible until long after it's already holding everything up. Nobody rebuilds a life in one dramatic moment, no matter how much we wish that were true. We love the idea of the single turning point, the speech that changes everything, the sunrise epiphany, the one decision made on a mountaintop that instantly transforms a person from broken to whole. It makes for a wonderful story. It is almost never how it actually happens. Real recovery, the kind that holds up under pressure and doesn't collapse the first time life gets hard again, is built through something far less cinematic. The same small, unremarkable choice made over and over on days when nobody is watching and nothing about it feels significant at all. Think about what recovery actually looks like once you strip away the highlight reel. It looks like getting out of bed on a morning when every part of you wants to stay under the covers. It looks like making the bed anyway, even though the rest of your life feels unmade. It looks like eating something, even when you have no appetite for food or for anything else. It looks like one honest phone call to someone you trust. One short walk outside when the walls of the house feel like they're closing in. One night you chose to stay in the room instead of walking out of it. None of these moments look like turning points while you're living them. They look like nothing. They look like the bare minimum. But here is what almost nobody tells you. The bare minimum, repeated with enough consistency, is exactly what rebuilding is made of. This is precisely why so many people give up too early on their own recovery. They are waiting for the big moment, the day they wake up and simply feel like themselves again, all at once, completely restored. And because that day rarely arrives the way they imagined it, they conclude that nothing is working, that they must not be trying hard enough, that maybe they really are as stuck as they feel. But recovery was never going to announce itself with fireworks. It was always going to arrive quietly, disguised as a Tuesday, hidden inside 100 small decisions that individually look like nothing and collectively become everything. Consider what happens physically when a broken bone heals. There is no single dramatic instant where the bone goes from shattered to strong. There is a slow, invisible process happening beneath the surface every single day. Cells doing quiet, unglamorous work that nobody can see and nobody applauds. Until one day, weeks or months later, the bone that was once broken is stronger at the point of the break than it was before. That is not a metaphor I'm reaching for. That is simply how healing has always worked, in the body and in the life. It happens beneath the surface, through repetition, long before it shows up as something visible. So if you are in the middle of rebuilding right now, I need you to release yourself from the exhausting search for the one decision that will fix everything. There isn't one. There never was. What there is instead is today's decision, the only one that has ever actually been available to any person in any recovery in the history of the world. Will you get up today? Will you make one honest choice today? Will you take one small action today that moves you a single inch closer to the life you're trying to rebuild, even though it feels utterly insignificant in the moment you're making it? That is the entire mechanism of recovery. Not one great leap, but 10,000 small steps that nobody sees you take. And one day, not because of one moment, but because of all of them stacked quietly on top of each other, you will look back and realize the person who couldn't get out of bed is the same person who is now standing, steady. On ground they rebuilt themselves, one unremarkable Tuesday at a time. Nobody will have witnessed the individual bricks, but they will all be able to see the wall. If you are in that dark room right now, don't leave this moment without doing one small thing for yourself. Reach out to one person today and tell them the truth about how you're really doing. Not tomorrow, not when things get better, today, while it still feels hard. Because the reaching out is not weakness. It is the first brick of the life you're about to rebuild.